Hi, Al.
Hey Lou, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not bad. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. I'm excited for this one because this is our first women's only episode of Brand is Everything. And we're not talking about a tiny off the beaten track project. We are talking about one of the biggest companies with one of the biggest rebrands that we've seen probably within the last decade. And we are talking about Tinder.
Woo! Yeah, this will be fun.
I'm super excited for this. I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory on this rebrand that Tinder did, and then show you both the inspiration behind it, how they approached it in this very unique kind of way, and then we'll look at the visuals and go from there.
Yeah, this is a trip. I remember I was a freshman in college when Tinder first hit the scene, and it felt more like a new technology than a way to meet people. It was the first of its kind with the swiping mechanism. I remember sitting on the bed with
Hmm.
my roommate, and it was this experience of using the app that was more fun than actually trying to meet up with someone. And
Oh,
at the same
yeah.
time, new apps like Uber were coming out, delivery apps were coming out, Spotify. It was this whole boom of convenience apps, and that included dating. So I remember Tinder's original branding looked a lot more actually like a B2B SaaS tech company, like
Yes.
an app. So I'm very interested to see how they've refreshed their identity.
It's a really interesting approach that they did too. So Tinder worked with a New York-based studio called Porto Rocha, and it's their first rebrand that they've done in 10 years. So it really is a complete, shall we say,
Total overhaul.
deviation, yeah, from what we've all known Tinder to be. I mean, even in my own dating life, I met my husband on a dating app. So like,
I didn't know that.
yeah, no, we met on Hinge. Shout out
Okay.
Hinge.
Okay. We'll talk about that
Um,
too. I've got some
we can talk
thoughts on
about
Tinder
that.
versus Hinge. Yep.
Tinder's been in the zeitgeist and in the dating cultural for so much of our adulthoods. So it really is interesting that they approached their rebrand like this. So rather than doing straight visual refresh that a lot of companies will do when they want to rebrand to freshen up their logo, freshen up their aesthetic, Porto Rocha actually built this whole rebrand for Tinder based on a fictional persona that they named T. And T is Tinder's new dating columnist. It's someone who's been there, done that, has been in the weeds. It's the voice of the person who's used these apps, who's been in the dating zeitgeist all these years, and is now coming to the fresh users of Tinder with all of this advice from the other side, if you will. And what's interesting about this is that the design followed the voice and not the other way around. So the first visual that I'm going to show you is what Porto Rocha and Tinder agreed upon as T's voice and identity. This is some of the reference material that they use when
Carrie Bradshaw.
developing T. It's a really interesting combination. They used, of course, the iconic Carrie Bradshaw, as well as a agony aunt type character from a UK magazine that used to be really prominent in the 90s called Sky. And you'll see the agony aunt column here on the right-hand side under Dear Karen. And I actually included the Dear Karen tagline here, and I'll just read it out. It says, think that advice columns these days are a little harsh, missing a certain sensitivity? Yeah, well, Sky's agony aunt Karen agrees, but then she started it. Still want to write? Well, that's your decision. So there's this snarkiness, there's this humor, and anyone who's in the cultural zeitgeist and understands and watched Sex and the City too, Carrie Bradshaw has that similarly humorous, sometimes snarky, and then surprisingly honest, refreshing take. So this is the voice and the aesthetic that Porto Rocha and Tinder agreed upon for this fictional dating columnist who then informed this entire rebrand from there.
Very cool. Yeah, with T, they're effectively giving Tinder a friend who's been through this shit before and
Yeah.
someone who doesn't judge. And Carrie Bradshaw was messy. Modern dating life is messy.
So
And so I
messy.
think I mentioned that Tinder and Hinge have very different positioning. And from a product positioning perspective, because I'm a product marketer, so that's the lens I'm looking at this through, Tinder is not trying to become Hinge. They always had that reputation of being all about hookup culture. They know what they are, and they know that they are well known, they have awareness, but they need to reframe how people are thinking about the experience of using Tinder.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not trying to say Tinder is now serious dating, but what they're instead saying is that they're low pressure. Tinder is where something might happen. And I think of that David Bowie quote, I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise it won't bore you. And that is how be someone like a Carrie Bradshaw. The fun is just starting, and I think we'll probably get into this, but it seems like Tinder is saying that this is the start of a fun, messy experience, and we just need to be real about the fact that modern dating is not polished, and you don't know where it's going, and you don't know what's going to happen, but it's an experience that you can be open to and have fun with.
Totally. And that is actually a really good segue into looking at some of the visuals that they then developed. So this is some of the rebrand that Tinder and Porto Rocha did. And you can feel T's voice coming through. It is witty. There's this honesty. There's a level, as you said, of self-awareness. I'm going to read some of these, but one of the cards says, I'm looking for someone to grow with. Currently 5'9", trying to be 6 foot by June. Another one is, I'm happiest when I'm at the beach collecting seashells or digging a hole. If loving this is wrong, I don't want to be right. Romantic comedies and junior bacon cheeseburgers consumed simultaneously. There's this wittiness. There's this, as you said, this lack of pressure that something more akin to a Hinge, a Raya is more focused on. And there is that comical play here too. Happily TBD, happily to be determined, or on my way beats, I don't know. There's this level of self-deprecation that is a really interesting through line in all of the language that's been developed.
The messaging, yeah. I
And
love it starts with the swipe. Yeah, I love it starts with the swipe because, like I was saying, they are making it about a journey. I don't know where I'm going, but I know that it won't bore you. And it's the swipe is the beginning of the experience. I think people got really fatigued and disillusioned with the apps, as we started calling it. It felt like the apps lost the plot by gamifying and
totally.
the very human experience of finding someone to love. And people still want, if I had to guess at the insight, because, you know, that's a game we like to play here is guess the insight when we see a brand we admire. I think the insight here might be that people still want romance and connection. They're not tired of dating in general, but they're tired of the way dating apps work. And so they want that connection, but the way dating apps work they can make dating feel transactional, performative, and exhausting. And it became too much like the convenience apps of shopping or ordering delivery. And so what I like about this rebrand is it makes it more human. It brings the real experience back to the forefront instead of making the app the experience. So the app is the starting point of a journey that's your journey, and the off-app outcome, the I'm on my way or happily TBD, let's see what happens, you're starting something that's going to happen off the app. So that becomes the outcome, not that experience of using the app and endlessly swiping.
It's interesting that they developed a persona for this rebrand too, because it's almost personified and humanized, as you said, the app itself. It's no longer just a platform to be endlessly swiping. It's someone to be engaging with. I think of my own dating experience. I think the apps would have been far more pleasurable if I had been guided talking to someone, if you will, a T to take you through this rather odd experience. It's interesting though, the strategic thesis and the contradiction that they really went into with the design. Porto Rocha's strategy lead basically said that their target audience with all of this was the burnt out but hopeful, nostalgic single who is inventing new norms and really caught in this space between wanting a relationship, wanting love, wanting that next phase of life, and a lot of that feeling like a fantasy, feeling like it's out of reach. And instead of really doubling down on modern dating, they went back to that very nostalgic 90s kind of cultural play, if you will, that feels comforting, if not a little honest and a little self-deprecating and a little hit it where it hurts. But it creates this culture and this conversation more than just a platform to swipe through and have your pick, basically. I wanted to show you about a couple of the other visuals that they did with this too. So this is how their interface has changed with this rebrand. So you'll see, I'll play it one more time so you can just get a sense of the GIFs and how they interact. This was their before and then their after logo. So they really lent into a boldness with the updated typeface and then have really leaned into the swiping as a mechanism for their marketing. They also release this GIF at the same time.
Yeah,
anyone can
very editorial.
Very editorial.
Magazine.
Very like Cosmo adjacent.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of Teen Vogue.
Yes.
Vogue even, right? I wanted to say the typography is a lot more magazine-like or even something that you would see on a card. So it
Hmm.
speaks more to love and romance. And
Totally.
if we're thinking about what I said earlier in terms of it being more like a B2B SaaS tech company, that earlier logo looks a lot more like the early Uber logo or
Yeah.
Peloton, all of these more tech brands where now they're positioning themselves as not app, but as the experience after the app. And
Hmm.
so I like the confidence of it. And I like that they kept the logo. I think a
Yeah.
lot of places would actually, do a lot even more dramatic of an overhaul, and they kept a very similar logo. They doubled down on the editorial aspect of it and made it less tech, more about the experience.
Hmm.
It's
No,
very cool.
totally. And when you hear someone talk about dating apps in general as well, the through line is always get off the app. As soon as
Hmm.
you can, get off the app. This almost makes the app experience itself that much more appealing. It's someone to be conversing with. This columnist, this T, is someone who you want to be friends with. You want to go to them for this level of advice. It's a really smart marketing play of developing this persona and then having it as your thread throughout all of it.
So, Lou, before we wrap, there's one more thing I want to ask about. We've been talking on our own marketing team about what it means to be for something and against something. So, Nike is for being active and
Yeah.
against sitting on the couch. HelloFresh is for cooking at home and against the convenience of ordering delivery. If we did this exercise for the Tinder rebrand, what would you say they're for and what would you say they're against?
Oh, that's such a good question. Before this rebrand, I would have said that Tinder was for late night dalliances, if you
You
will,
up?
a late night connection, and it was against anything really long lasting in a romantic capacity. That was a pretty well established position, whether that was officially through Tinder itself or in the cultural conversation of how it was utilized. Now, after this rebrand, I'd say that Tinder is now a level of romantic self-reflection. There's something self-examining about this. Why are you using this app in particular? There's a level of honesty that is fresh here that wasn't previously. Tinder is against long-lasting romance, and I think that they've
Oh.
made that pretty clear with the happily TBD. There's nothing in this vernacular that is promoting a use our app and find the love of your life. It's still very casual. So I'd say that Tinder is definitely still not for your long lasting romantic connection. But I think that it's certainly far conversation and community oriented. But I'd love to hear your take on that too.
Yeah, I would say that they're for possibility.
Mm,
Like what you were saying about how they're not going to promise that you'll find your soulmate and your everything and the love of your life. They're not promising that. They're saying we are for possibility. It starts here, see what happens. They're for chemistry, maybe curiosity, imperfection, and seeing where it goes. I would think they're against, it sounds like they're against dating as optimization.
yeah.
Like you're not trying to optimize for the perfect person or the perfect profile. I would say they're against the pressure to find the one or knowing the outcome or having an outcome in mind before you start. So I'd say that's pretty in line with how you're thinking about it, which is very fascinating that
Yeah,
they take that strong position and makes branding that much more effective. So
it
I'm glad
does.
you brought this one to the table this week.
I liked this one. There's something very personal about it. I met my husband on a dating app. We met on Hinge, but a very different kind of experience, right? To like find the one. And that's how Hinge is marketed. I think what's interesting about having such a strong voice and personality now intertwined through Tinder's branding too is that it feels like a far more personal experience and therefore the gamification of the app is almost lessened.
Yeah, well, from a business perspective, I believe they had a downturn in users. And so we'll see if this rebrand works, but
Yeah.
I like what they're doing here.
I like what they're doing too. Definitely caught my eye. Such a well-established company that already has such a place of prominence in how we talk about modern dating. For them to take on a pretty drastic rebrand 10 years later says a lot about the risks that they're willing to take to stay relevant. But I'm glad that they did so in a way that does, as I said, feels very nostalgic. It feels like your big sister is coming in and giving you the dating spiel and advice that she wished she had known. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this lands. So we'll, maybe this is a part two in 6 months and we'll see the success or lack thereof. But I'm hopeful about this one. I think it's fun and I think it's whimsical and definitely got me interested in talking.
It was great. Cool. Well, thanks for chatting about it.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and we'll see what next week brings.
Sounds good. See you, Lou.
Bye.